We welcome you back to the Steam Room, the second most popular podcast in the history of media. You can look it up. It's right there. And Chuck, say the two words.
Special guest. Special guest.
Nick Saban joins us, head coach, University of Alabama. This is a Steam Room highlight for us, Coach, and we appreciate you being here. Please keep your towel on. That's the only Steam Room rule that we have. And I know that you and Chuckster go back a little ways. I was looking at a one-on-one interview you guys did in Tuscaloosa about 4 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that. Charles, to me, does an outstanding job. Sometimes when people interview you, you feel a little bit like you got to stay guarded. You can't be yourself. And I think that people who can disarm you a little bit and make you feel comfortable, which I think he does a great job of. Maybe it's because I have such respect for him as a player when he was a player. And incidentally, I liked your little piece in The Last Dance, even though you guys didn't end up winning. It was really a great team that you had. And when I was at the Cleveland Browns, I actually saw that team play. So, yeah, we do go back. I do appreciate Charles. He was a great competitor, a great player, and he's done a great job from a media standpoint. And I always enjoy doing stuff with him.
How many years you been coaching?
I don't know. I'd have to figure out. My first year coaching was 1973. I was a graduate assistant for Coach Don James at Kent State. So you can do the math on that. So what is it, 2020 now? That's a long time.
Going on 50 years pretty soon here, Coach.
The reason I asked that question is this the longest you've ever stayed still is my question.
Yeah, it is. It is the longest I ever stayed still. And I think, we kind of go through stations in life where, we're aspiring to something or whatever. And my career was a little bit different than, a lot of times college coaches are college coaches, NFL coaches are NFL coaches, but for whatever reasons, I kind of went back and forth. I would get an opportunity in college, then I'd get an opportunity in the NFL, then I'd go back to college. So as that progressed, I always felt like I wanted to be a head coach in college first. But since I had coached in the NFL for 6 years, I thought the ultimate goal was to be a coach in the NFL someday. So when I went to LSU, we won the national championship. I said, okay, this is the time, this is the opportunity. Miami Dolphins is a great place, but you learn about yourself. Now, we didn't have free agency when I was a coach in the NFL at the Houston Oilers and the Cleveland Browns, which completely changed the dynamics of your team in a lot of ways. And it's good for the players. I'm not complaining about it, but I had never experienced that. All right, so when I went to the Dolphins, we were way over the salary cap. We didn't have any draft picks. I mean, it was a tough situation. And I found out, man, I get so much more positive self-gratification being a college coach. All right, so I just hope that someday I can go back to a coach. So instead of climbing the ladder, I finally sort of figured out this is what I'm all about and what I want to do. And I felt fortunate to be able to get an opportunity at a place like Alabama. So once I got here, I was thankful and had gratitude for getting here. And we've never, ever wanted to leave, really.
Coach, aside from the obvious thing of salaried players versus college kids, what is the fundamental difference between coaching an NFL player and coaching a college player? And do you have to change who you are in that setting?
I don't really think there's a whole lot of difference. I think if you're a good coach, and Charles could probably have a good opinion on this too, and I would be interested to hear what he has to say about it. The players respect you. The motivation is just different. In college, players are trying to be, better players, so they have an opportunity maybe to develop a career as a player so they can make money for their family or whatever. All right, so their motivation is a little bit different. I think once you become a professional player, then you want to make as much money as you can. You want to play for as long as you can. And there's really nothing wrong with that. So the motivation is different. But if you're a good coach and you can help a guy in either one of those scenarios sort of accomplish the goal that he has, whether it's a college player wanting to play in the NFL someday or a professional player who wants to extend his career, I never felt like on the field coaching, teaching, working with players was really any different. The difference is what is the motivation? You know, one is totally driven by, you know, money. And the other one, you know, you've got young people who have goals and aspirations and dreams that they're trying to accomplish. And so it's just a little bit different motivation. But the actual coaching of the player, I think that's one of the greatest misconceptions that people have. They say, well, this guy's a star player. He's got to be hard to coach. Probably doesn't listen to the coach. I never found that to be true at all. All right, with players, you know, they still want to be good. They still respect the coach. Now, I think that the premiums probably needs to be on the word good, because I think if a player sees a coach as a phony or doesn't really know what he's talking about, then he's probably not going to respect them. But fortunately or unfortunately, I never felt like I ever had to deal with that with players.
He's right. The difference is, I mean, college players, most of them think they're going to get to the pros, so they're going to listen to coaching. And in the pros, man, they just want to win. That's the bottom line. Everybody wants to win. You're going to get some knuckleheads here or there who not going to listen to coaching. They got their own agenda. But I think most players want to win. And the key is, from a coaching standpoint, I think the only difference between college and pros is all of the players are going to listen to you in college. And if you saw with his last dance thing with Michael, like, you can't coach Dennis Rodman the same way you coach other guys. And so to me, the pros are, you're coaching, but you're a psychologist also. I mean, because if Dennis Rodman did, like, let's take somebody who in the NFL, if Bill Belichick, who is a great coach, tried to coach Dennis Rodman, I don't think it would work. I mean, and that's the biggest difference. You know, you even take Scottie Pippen, who's a great player. Like, I'm not going to play because I want to have, they're not going to pay me, so I'm going to wait to have surgery. Like, no, man, you got to play. So that was the interesting thing about that whole documentary. You got to see all aspects of the pros. Because, Ernie, I tell people, they say, what's your biggest takeaway from The Last Dance? I says, you think about this, you see all the internal conflict going on between coaches and players, players and players, coaches and general managers. And I said, Ernie, they won 6 championships. Can you imagine all the crap that goes on bad teams in pro sports?
Exactly.
That was the thing that I tell people. I said, they won 6 championships, and they still got all this stuff. So to piggyback on Coach's point, I think the hardest thing for a coach, he is, man, like, I got to make all this thing work. Everybody's got their own agenda, but how do I pull it together for the betterment of the team? To me, that's the biggest difference.
Right. One of the things, Ernie, that I, sort of piggyback onto that was, I felt my experience as an NFL coach for 8 years was probably the best experience in terms of my professional growth and development as a coach, because of this one point, which Charles sort of alludes to. Before I went in the NFL, when I was a college coach, I'd really coached every player the same. I mean, I coached them the same technique. I treated them all the same. So being fair and honest with players and treating them all the same it's different. Okay, so what I learned in the NFL is that you have to coach a player for his style of play as well as his personality. In other words, you can't treat everybody the same. And you like, I had Frank Minifield and Everson Walls in Cleveland. There could not be 2 different kind of corners. Frank was a smaller guy, great feet, great change of direction, great burst, really good cover guy. Everson Walls was a big guy, long arms, not real fast, but both very effective players. But their style of play could not have been any different. So I had to learn how to coach one guy in a half turn who wasn't a great backpedal guy, and the other guy didn't need to play in a half turn. So you have to learn how to coach every guy for what he can do. That has been the greatest asset for me coming back to college after that experience, because you reach so many more players. You see a guy like Drake Kirkpatrick, who played here for us, who's long. He needs to play like Everson Walls played. And you got somebody else like Cyrus Jones. He needs to play like Frank Minifield played. All right, so you learn how to get to more and more players, not only from a physical standpoint, but also from a psychological and emotional standpoint. And I think that that's something that has helped us be successful because we're able to get more players to reach their full potential because we don't treat everybody the same. You got to be fair and honest with people, but you can't treat them all the same. And I learned that coaching in the NFL.
Does it ever get personal for you when you're coaching? You're coaching against the guy on the other side. Is it ever personal?
No, not really. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that coach for me now that are actually have programs of their own, and they're doing a great job in their programs. But, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the guys that because they did a great job when they were here with us or worked with us. And knowing that it's their goal and aspiration to be able to get the opportunity to be a head coach because that's what they wanted to be. And, you want to win. I mean, you want to win for your team. You want to win for your program. And I'm sure you respect the fact that they want to win. I've never been one like Bill Belichick and I were in the same division when I was at Miami and he was at New England. We were best of friends. We coached together for a long time. I coached with his dad, so I'd known his family for a long time. And I wanted to beat him, and I knew he wanted to beat us, and I respected that. But we didn't dislike each other. There was no, you don't have to hate the guy you're playing against, all right, to want to win. I mean, being a competitor does not mean you have to dislike the person you're playing against. That may be a motivating factor for you, but it's not something that I've sort of relied on through the years. I guess it's internal motivation, what you want to accomplish versus external motivation, which is all the things outside of you that can motivate you. And when you depend on that, you're going to be a little up and down because sometimes that's not going to be there.
How confident are you right now you're going to play some football?
Well, I don't think anybody knows for sure what the outcome is going to be because I think a lot of it's going to depend on what happens moving forward. I mean, if we have a setback with, the spread of this disease, does that set us all back in terms of what we're trying to do in terms of moving forward? But I know it's kind of everyone's goal to try to have a football season that starts when it's supposed to start, like Labor Day weekend, and have as normal schedule as possible and as normal playoff situation as possible. But I don't know if that's going to be realistic or not. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for the players. There's a lot of players on your team that are looking forward to this season so that maybe they can enhance their value and have an opportunity to play at the next level. There's a lot of guys that would like to have a chance to win a championship, SEC championship, whatever. And they've worked hard to try to do that. And if they can't play a normal season, that's the thing that would bother me the most. The same thing with the players and participants who missed all the spring sports, whether it was their golf team, their baseball team, their softball team, whatever. You hate it for the participants who work so hard to have that opportunity, and now it's taken away from them through no fault of their own. So that's a situation that I hope we don't have to endure in the fall. So I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to play football in some capacity. Now, what are the guidelines going to be? Are we going to have fans? Are you going to have to wear a mask in the stands? Somebody sent me a picture of Georgia Tech Stadium in like 1918 or 1917 when we were having the Spanish flu. The stadium was full. They were playing a game. It might have only held 25,000 people back in those days, but everybody had a mask on. So is that a possibility for us to play football in the fall to minimize, the possibilities of transmission? These are not decisions that are up to me. They're just things that I'm hopeful will happen.
I've heard some conversation, and I really don't like the conversation that some of these conferences say, big wigs say, we should play even if everybody can't play. What's your thought on that? Like just certain schools playing, I just don't think that'll be fair for the big picture.
Well, I agree with you. But let's just take the scenario. What if they can't play in California, or they say they can't play in California? Well, we play USC the first game. TCU plays Cal, for example, the first game. So what if they can't play in California, but we can play? All right, where we obviously can't play a game. Maybe we play TCU instead of Southern Cal because they can't play a California school as well. But is it a fair question to say, just because California can't play, none of the other players can participate and play. So, that's a pretty tough debate. I would be for whatever players can participate to be able to participate, and it may not be completely fair, but at least some of the players would have an opportunity to enhance their value and their dream of what they're really trying to accomplish as a college student athlete. So, and getting an education obviously is the most important thing in preparing yourself for when you can't play. But we all know that a lot of these guys, all have dreams of playing at the next level.
Hey, Coach, or maybe you don't, you broke my heart 2 years in a row. I can admit that, and I'm still working my way through it, being a Georgia guy. National championship game, SEC championship game. How do you characterize those games? Because they were both awesome to watch. Obviously, I didn't love the feeling I had in the parking lot afterwards, but those college football games right there, how do you describe them?
Well, I think those were two great games. I mean, both of them a little different scenario in terms of both games we came from behind in, both games we changed quarterbacks. Um, you know, Tua replaced Jalen in one game, Jalen replaced Tua in the other, which I think, was a great opportunity for both of those guys to support the other guy, which they did a nice job of, which goes a long way to express the kind of team chemistry you have. Georgia had really, really good teams. They played extremely well in the game. I mean, one play could have decided those games either way. We have a tremendous amount of respect for, Kirby and the program he has there at Georgia and the players they have. And those were, they're great competitive games, and people should really, really enjoy, the entertainment that those games provide. And I know we're all fans, and we get emotionally involved in games like this. So some people are going to be extremely happy, and some people are going to be somewhat disappointed. And I have a residence in Georgia too. So, I always kind of like to see Georgia do well, but not necessarily when they're playing us.
Not at the expense of you, that's for sure. Let me throw something out there before, Charles, I know you're waiting, but you talked about fans, and it seems to me, Coach, that fans make a difference in every sport, or it's huge for every sport, but college football is like in a league of its own in terms of tailgating and people from out of town and alumni coming in and filling the place, and it's such an event. Um, could you see having a college football season without that?
Well, I'd hate to see it, to be honest with you, because there's a spirit that around college football that is unique to most anything else that I've ever experienced, and so many people relate to. And I think in the SEC, it's even more pronounced than anywhere else in the country, and I think that's because until like 1970 or something, there were no pro sports in the South. So I don't care where you grew up in Alabama or where you grew up in Louisiana or Florida or wherever, you grew up being a college football, basketball, you grew up being a college fan. All right, there was no choice like Michigan State. Michigan was 56 miles down the road. Notre Dame was 70 miles down the road. The Detroit Lions, the Detroit Tigers, the Detroit Red Wings, the Detroit Pistons. You grew up as a kid, you had about 10 different teams you could choose to root for. If you grew up in Alabama, you either liked Alabama or you liked Auburn. Right? And that's the way it was. There is no Birmingham Stallions that plays in the NFL for everybody to root for. So I think that's why the passion in the SEC is what it is, because a whole generation of people grew up being college football fans. So you have the pro sports fan and the college sports fan all tied into one in the SEC, which I think is a pretty unique circumstance. And I would absolutely hate it if those people couldn't participate and have the fun that they have surrounding the spirit of a college football game. It just is what it is. Even my kids, as simple as it was when they were little, when I was at LSU and my little girl, she wanted to go see Mike the Tiger, man, in the cage. That's a part of the tradition of, college football. We were at the Cleveland Browns. there wasn't any Mike the Tiger to go see. I mean, it's a different venue. All right, they're still the same fans, same kind of passion, but it's a little different spirit, all right, that goes along, with those two things. And a lot of people identify with their college, and they have, a lot of pride and tradition that their college has, and you have to respect that, in terms of every school that you play.
Being from Alabama, so I'm there quite a bit, and I got just as many Alabama fans as Auburn fans. Do you ever get frustrated? Like, there's so much pressure on you to go undefeated, and if you lose a game, it's like the end of the world. I get frustrated when I'm there. You obviously have won so much, but if you lose one game, they act like it's the end of the world.
Well, I think that, sometimes we don't try to focus on the expectations that other people have, externally for our program, our team. It's hard not to listen to the noise, but we really do try to stay focused on the things that we can control, which is how do we develop our team, and how do we try to get our team to be the best that they can be. And we have a high standard for what we want to accomplish and what we do internally as a team. So it's not dependent on what everybody else thinks. I do know what you're talking about. I do feel that pain sometimes, because of the expectation. But I think the hardest thing for me as a coach to manage is how does that affect your players? All right, because it does affect your players. All right, and that's what I don't like. It creates anxiety because all of a sudden they're not playing for themselves and their teammates. They're worrying about what everybody else thinks, and I'm not sure that's the best way to have fun as a competitor and be the best that you can be at what you try to do. I'd rather be it from internally from you than externally from someone else. But I do know what you're talking about. I do know the feeling. I try not to let it bother me at all, and just stay focused on what we can accomplish and what we can do internally in terms of being the best we can be. But sometimes it's not realistic. I mean, you can't lose 4 starters in the front 7, lose the quarterback who's a great player and the leader of your team on defense, and not think that that's going to affect the kind of team you have. So sometimes you have good luck. I mean, we went through seasons around here when we won the national championship. We had 9 games missed by starters, the whole 14 or 15 games. I mean, last year we had about 90. All right, so to think that those two things are not going to have some impact in a positive way or a negative way is not really realistic. And I don't try to explain that to anybody. It kind of is what it is because they are fans. They want to be good. They want to be the best. And I'd much rather be at a place where everybody wants to be the best and some place where they're satisfied with being mediocre.
During this pandemic, I'm saying right now, you binge watched some shows, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Well, what are they?
I watched 6 of them in a row because I missed the first ones. Yeah.
What's the best thing you binge watched during this pandemic?
I like The Last Dance. I mean, the other stuff that I watch with Miss Terry. So she really has a little stronger vote than I have on what we watch. So sometimes I just have to persevere. I got to practice perseverance.
But who's got the remote?
She does.
See, that's groundbreaking stuff. Right
If I do, it's, well, why are we watching this?
So what's Miss Terry having you watch?
We watch things on Netflix or Amazon or one of those where you can watch one episode and
Yeah, like Ozark. Are you an Ozark fan?
We watched Ozark, Little Fires or something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
I went through that. That was pretty decent, interesting. We're all over the map, but those are 2 of my favorites, I think.
Chuckster, we have just spent about a half hour with a living legend here on the Steam Room.
Well, hey, Ernie, he already knows. I tell people he's the greatest college football coach ever. He's always treated me great. And, Coach, I want to thank you. You made my life miserable down at Auburn a couple times. But, man, it's an honor and a privilege to have you on the Steam Room. But, like I say, man, you're the best college football coach ever. And thanks what you do for the state of Alabama.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Charles. But, one thing that I've always admired about you and Bo Jackson, both, you've always put the people of the state in front of Auburn or Alabama. I know you're great fans for your school and all that kind of stuff, but both of you have done so much, all right, because you're two guys that have, tremendous reputations and influence to, help a lot of people in the state. And I think it would be a good thing for all of our fans, Alabama and Auburn alike, that we can be the best fans and the most passionate fans that we ever want to be. All right, but when it comes down to people and helping people, we ought to come together and do that, regardless of which school we love the most. And you do a great job of that, and so does Bo.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, man. Ernie, you all right? We could talk about the same thing from Georgia. I didn't know you were from Georgia, but
Yeah, well, class of '78 UGA. Born in Milwaukee, grew up in Atlanta, but it's just fun to watch competitive, good football. It's good to root for your team. It's great to be in that atmosphere, and somebody's going to walk away disappointed. And I kind of kid with you, but those were just great moments. And you can't match that atmosphere in that place on that night, man. It's awesome.
Well, I'm just they were great moments for me and Coach Saban. I can promise you that.
Thanks for piling on there, Chuckster. Appreciate that.
All right, guys. Well, hey, we appreciate you. Have a great day. God bless you, and stay safe, you and your families. All right. Thanks.
Right.
For having me on. Thank you.
Right back at you, Coach. Thank you.